Hi guys, we are in week 12. So last week we wrapped up our play. You wrote your play, hopefully you've got that turned in. This week we're starting a new unit, a unit on delivering speeches. So we're going to be looking at some speeches and we're also going to be working on a speech of our own. So this week and next week is the unit. It's just a 2-week unit. So next week is another embedded assessment. We just got done with one and now we have another one. I'm sorry. But it'll be easy for you. We'll either get together at CVVL and do the speeches together, or you can record yourself doing the speech and email it to me, but I need to see you do a speech somehow next week. So I will we'll be communicating about that, and I'll have a couple options for you and how to deliver that speech. I know it's kind of weird on an online class we have to do this speech, but we're going to figure out a way to do it. All right, so we'll have a couple options for CVVL at night where you can come do a speech for me. If you're at U High, we can make arrangements. You can come see me and do a speech, or you can somehow get it to me electronically. All right, so this week be thinking about, well, all of our assignments will be revolving around speeches because you're going to write one next week. So be thinking about your speech and how you might do it, all right? Preparing yourself mentally to do that. So first off, we have Springboard Activity 2.19. So you're going to, when you do your speech, you're going to pick some claim. It's almost like, remember when we did the argumentative essays? You had to pick a claim and support that claim. You had to address a counter argument. We're going to be doing the same thing in a speech this time, all right? So 2.19 is just previewing the assessment, previewing the embedded assessment that you're going to do. So it's just to get you thinking about the speech that you're going to have to do next week. So you're going to fill out this graphic organizer that I have for you. On the left-hand side, you're going to write some notes about the speaker. What does a speaker have to do during a speech? And then on the right-hand side, you're going to write some notes about the audience. What do you need to think about in terms of your audience? What do you need to know about your audience? What do you need to do with your audience if you're giving a speech? All right. And then down below that graphic organizer, there is one question for you to answer. It says, what skills will pose the greatest challenge to you in presenting an original speech? If this were me, and I'm thinking back to my old high school self when I had to do speeches, just getting up in front of the class was my greatest challenge. I could write a speech all day long, but getting up and actually delivering it was a challenge for me. So that's how I would answer that question. Yours might be the same or yours might be very different. All right. So in activity 2.20, pull up Springboard Activity 2.20, you are going to look at Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address. Okay. So this is a speech that Abraham Lincoln gave, and you're going to look for some specific things that all speeches need. All right. So this is the SOAPSTONE acronym. You're going to fill out this graphic organizer as you're reading the speech. So first off, who is the speaker? That one we already know. What's the occasion? Who is the audience? What's the purpose? What's the subject of it? And what is the tone of the speech? So as you read through that, fill in the graphic organizer for all those components, okay? Then you guys are going to think about your own speech. So think about something that you want to talk about. Think about some cause or some issue that is important to you. It's something that you'd be able to create an argument for. So you're going to need to think of an issue that you think is something worth talking about, like global warming, just to throw something out there, some random thing that came to me. You're going to pick a position on that and write a speech supporting whether you think global warming is an issue that we should all be concerned with or not. Should we just ignore global warming? Who cares? So think about the speaker, that's you. What is your role going to be? Are you a concerned citizen? Are you a student? Are you a new driver who's concerned about some issue regarding the road? Are you a user of a specific piece of technology? What's your role in this? Why are you writing about this? What's the occasion? Who is your audience going to be? What purpose? What do you want to accomplish? What's the subject? So what's just the topic of your essay, global warming or whatever? And then what is your tone? What's your attitude about this subject? So this is to get you brainstorming about the actual speech you will do next week. So fill this in. This is a great starting point to get you going on your essay. All right? Now, that's all you have to do for 2.20. So 2.21, Springboard Activity 2.21 talks about rhetoric. Rhetoric, isn't that a weird word? We're going to look at some examples of rhetoric. You're going to read the speech to the Virginia Convention, all right? And you're going to look for rhetorical devices. And I've got a whole list of them in your announcements and assignments. They also have a big list of them on the Springboard activity. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but let me highlight some. So sometimes a rhetoric device that a speaker might use is allusion. That's when you reference another person or another work. Like you might say, the Bible says da 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 da. Or this so-and-so, this famous person says this about my issue. And by bringing in that other person or that other thing, it creates more validity to your argument, or gets people to come to your side because, oh, this other person or this other thing says the same thing that I am saying. You could have an own anecdote, which is just a short little story about something that illustrates a point you're trying to make. Another big one, you could appeal to people's pride or appeal to their emotions to get them like feeling sorry or sympathy for this. Or you can, let me see, what are some other ones? Using emotional words is a big key. Word choice, diction is key in speeches. You want your word choice to be powerful. You want it to persuade. So make sure you're using emotional words. Pick your diction carefully. Imagery is a good one. Painting a vivid picture for your listeners is going to help them understand your point and be persuaded. Repetition is one you'll see a lot of. We'll actually be viewing some speeches in the next week or two, and you'll see speakers repeat phrases or words over and over again. That kind of drives home their point. So those are just a few. We're going to talk about more as we go through this, but look through all of those and be thinking about which ones you could use in your speech, because you're not going to use all of them. That would be like overwhelming. But pick a few to use in your speech to help you be more persuasive. All right? The goal of rhetoric devices is to persuade your reader. I've got that highlighted there. Syntax is also important. Think about how you're arranging your sentences, what phrases you're putting in certain places, because syntax also creates more powerful statements. If you say, I've got an example here, this, I tell you, is non-negotiable. That is more powerful with that phrase inserted in there than just saying this is a non-negotiable. This, I tell you, is non-negotiable. So how you phrase your sentences creates more power in what you're saying. So think about your syntax also. Look at all these fancy words, rhetoric, syntax, crazy. So you're going to read that speech, look for those rhetoric devices. That's all you have to do. Then you're going to think about rhetoric devices that you could use. So think about your claim. In your claim, you're not really going to have a rhetorical device. That's just what you're saying you're arguing for. But in your support, you are definitely going to have rhetoric devices. So if you say that global warming is an issue we should be more concerned about, you're going to have support for that claim, all right? And use rhetorical devices in your support. So where could you put in some repetition? Where could you put in an anecdote? What are there any allusions you could use when you're talking about your support for your claim? Then you've got your counterclaim. So there are going to be people who disagree with you, right? You have to shut them down. You want to make sure that the people you're trying to persuade don't go to the other side. So mention what the other side says, and then tell your listeners why that other side doesn't make sense, why your claim is better than theirs. So be thinking about that, what the counterclaims to your claim might be, and what rhetorical devices you might use to say that in your speech. Finally, you're going to have a conclusion. Just like in our argumentative essays, you're going to need a call to action. So at the end of your speech, you should be able to tell your audience what you want them to do. This is a really powerful statement. So make sure you use some rhetoric, a rhetorical device when you do that. All right? Now, activity 2.22. So Springboard activity 2.22 talks about the three main rhetorical appeals. All right? So there's three different ones. You guys have probably heard these before. There's pathos. This is where you appeal to people's emotions. So we've all seen those Sarah McLachlan commercials, right? Where they show us all those pictures of the poor animals in the cages, and they're all like skinny and horrible looking. There's some imagery, which is another rhetoric device, but that is an example of pathos. We feel sad. That's playing on our emotions, right? You might hear people like talk about, oh, your child could die if this happens, or Like, that's all playing on people's emotions. That's pathos. Then there's ethos. This is where you're looking at the credibility or the qualifications of the speaker. So it might say like 4 out of 5 dentists recommend this. So this means you've got a credible source. They know what they're talking about. So if you're talking about toothpaste, it makes sense for a dentist to have an opinion about it, right? But if you're talking about toothpaste, you're not going to ask a veterinarian, unless they've got like animals with really good teeth. I don't know. But see how you want to make sure your sources are credible. Then you've got logos. This just means logical. Logos, logical. It just means you're arriving at a clear, logical reasoning in your argument. All right? So you might say something like, if this happens, then this is going to happen. So that's like a logical reasoning. All right? So you're going to go back to your speech, which you just looked at in activity 2.21, where you noted some rhetorical devices that you could use. Now you're going to look at these rhetorical appeals and tell me where in your speech you could use each of these rhetorical appeals. You want to try to use all 3 of them, because if you can use all 3 of them, that's going to be more convincing for your audience, all right? So fill out this graphic organizer and tell me what rhetorical appeals you can use in each section of your speech. All right? That is it. So the springboard activity in activity 2.22, you will see that it says to start writing your speech. You could, I think with these outlines, you should have a lot of information to make your speech writing easy next week. So you probably would be fine not doing that, but if you wanted to start drafting your speech for next week, you totally can. I'm just not going to require it, all right? If you have any questions on how to get this started, let me know. You want to get your questions answered now this week, because next week you're doing your embedded assessment, so I don't want you to go into next week not knowing what you're going to write about, not knowing what you're going to do your speech on, okay? So come talk to me if you need to. Remember, communication is the biggest thing. So if you're feeling behind or confused, if you talk to me, we can solve that problem. But if you just don't do any assignments, that problem we can't solve. All right, so talk to me and we can work things through if we need to. All right, I'll see you guys next week.